show you today how to arm knit a mermaid blanket, and we're going to be using Couture Jazz yarn from Premier Yarns, and we're going to be using 3 different colors, and I'll have all the colors and how many skeins you'll need listed down below and also on my blog. So I'll have everything linked down below under this video for you guys. So the first thing you want to do is pull a long tail from the skein of yarn. We're going to be doing the long tail cast on method, which is my favorite for arm knitting. You get a nice clean edge. So you're going to pull out a long tail. So we're going to need about 1, 2, 3, 4 to 5 feet. Okay, so then we're going to make a slip knot. So we're going to drape the yarn over our hand. You're going to pinch those 2 sides together, twist your hand away from you, and you're going to pick up the yarn that's attached to the skein of yarn, which is the working yarn, okay? And pull that through the loop. Now you have your slip knot, and you're going to place that onto your right arm. Tighten it up just a little bit. So we're going to be casting on now, and we're going to cast on a total of 18 stitches. So try not to make these too tight on your arm because they are going to have to move up. But we're going to start down here, so leave it a little bit loose. Now to cast on, we have the working yarn further away from us. Again, the working yarn is the one that's attached to the skein of yarn. And we have the tail that is closer to us. So we're going to take our ring finger and pinky and place the both working yarn and the tail underneath there with the palm of your hand facing you, okay? And then you're going to take your index finger and your thumb, and you're going to insert it in between those 2 strands, and then again face your palm towards you. And now we're going to take our index finger on our right hand, and we're going to go under this strand, over this strand, and pick up this one in the back, and that'll create a new stitch, and I'll show you how to do that. So you're going to go under this strand, over the one in the middle, so under, over, pick up the one in the back with your index finger and thumb, pull it up, okay, so this creates a new stitch here, and you're going to place that onto your right arm. So you just created a new stitch. Your slip knot counted as your first stitch, so this is your second stitch that you just made. So again, you're going to take your ring finger and pinky, place the yarn underneath, take your thumb and index finger and insert it in between the 2 strands, and then you're going to turn your palm towards you, take your index finger and go under, over, and pick up the one in the back. So under, over the one in the middle, pick up the strand in the back with your index finger and your thumb, and this creates a new loop, a new stitch. And you're going to place that onto your right arm. I'm going to cast on the rest of my stitches with a total of 18, and then I will show you how to arm knit your blanket. Okay, so we have our 18 stitches, and now we're going to move on to arm knitting all of these stitches to create our blanket. We're no longer going to be using the tail, we're just going to be using the working yarn attached to the skein of yarn. So to arm knit your first stitch, you hold the working yarn in your right hand, take this first stitch here, and you're going to pull it over and off while holding on to the working yarn with your right hand. And this is your new stitch. That new loop is your new stitch. So you're going to just go ahead and place that right onto your left arm. Now the first stitch of every row is going to be tricky to tighten. You have to pull on the working yarn with your left hand while pushing up on this knot. So now we're going to knit our next stitch. So again, hold the working yarn in your right hand. Take that next stitch and pull it over your hand and off while holding onto the working yarn. So this is your new stitch, and you're going to just place that onto your left arm. Tighten up a little bit. So I'm going to finish my row, and then I'll show you how to knit your stitches over to your right arm. Okay, so this is what your first row is going to look like after you knit the entire row. And I want to remind you to try to keep your stitches as tight as possible while still being able to move them a little bit on your arm. The tighter the stitch, the better it will look in the end. So now we're going to knit all of our stitches from our left to our right arm to create our second row of stitches. This time we're going to hold the working yarn in our left hand, take the first stitch, and with your right hand pull it over and off while holding onto the working yarn with your left hand. And this is your new stitch, and you're going to just place that right onto your right arm. And you're going to tighten. Remember how I showed you how to tighten the first stitch is to push up on this knot here. Okay. And now we're going to knit our second stitch. So again, hold the working yarn in your left hand, take that stitch and pull it over and off, creating this new stitch here that you're going to put on your right arm. Tighten as much as you can and knit your next stitch. So hold the working yarn in your left hand, pull this next stitch over and off while holding onto the working yarn, and there's your new stitch, and place it onto your right arm. And I just keep kind of moving it up as I go. That way it stays pretty comfortable on my arm. And again, take the next stitch, pull it over and off, and place it onto your right arm. And we're just going to keep doing that across the entire row. So as you continue on with your blanket, you're going to run out of yarn, obviously, and you're going to have to add on a new skein. And to do that, I just like to tie a double or a triple knot. So you're just going to tie the new strand to the old strand with a very tight double or triple knot. I like to pull both ways. And this isn't as noticeable as you would think. So I was able to do a triple knot. And then you take your scissors and you just trim kind of shaped to the knot so that you don't have too much of little ends sticking out. Okay, and then you're ready to continue knitting. So this is what it looks like after 2 rows of knitting. I'm going to go ahead and knit the rest of my blanket. We're going to do a total of 22 rows. So knit 22 rows, and when we come back, I'll show you how to complete your blanket. Alright guys, so this is what 22 rows looks like. Okay, and if you want it longer, you just continue to knit more rows, but we're going to go ahead and start our decreasing, which will shape the blanket to get skinnier towards the foot. So we're going to do a couple of decreased rows. To do this, what you want to do is, instead of knitting just 1 stitch, we are going to knit 2 stitches together as if they're 1, and that will decrease 1 stitch. So for your 23rd row, we're going to knit 2 together. So just hold the working yarn in your right hand as you were doing before. Take those first 2 stitches and pull them over and off, and just knit them like they are 1 stitch. And tighten it up as much as you can. And we're going to do that one more time. So knit 2 more stitches together as if they're 1 over to your left arm. So we just knit 4 stitches, but it turned into just these 2. So now we're going to knit until we come up to the last 4 stitches of this row. So knit these stitches over to your left arm. Remember to keep everything as tight as you can. Okay, So now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to knit these next 2 stitches together as if they're one. So we knit 2 together, and we knit these next 2 together as well. So now we're going to do the same thing in the 24th row. So hold the working yarn in your left hand this time, and we're going to knit those first 2 stitches together as if they're one. So pull them off and over your hand, and move that new stitch over to your right arm. And again, knit those next 2 stitches together as if they're one, and move that stitch over to your right arm. And now we're going to knit until we come up to the last 4 stitches of our row. So knit all of these stitches, and now we're going to knit these 2 together and knit these 2 together. Okay, so we're done with our decreasing, and now we're just going to end our blanket. And to end your blanket, you bind off, and to do that, we are going to knit 1 stitch over to your left arm. And when you bind off, you don't want to tighten too much, so just tighten a little bit, and then we're going to knit 1 more stitch. Okay, and now we're going to take that first stitch and we're going to pull it over the second one off of our hand and drop it. So now you're left with 1 stitch on your arm. So now we're going to knit 1 more. Take that first stitch, pull it over the second one and off, and drop it, and tighten up just a little. Knit 1 more, and bind 1 off, and tighten a little bit. Knit 1, and bind 1 off. Knit 1, bind 1 off. And you're going to do that across the row until you have 1 stitch left. Okay, so when you get to this last stitch on your arm, what you're going to do is pull this through the loop. Okay, you can cut it from the skein. I'm going to cut mine about 2 to 3 feet away from the edge of my blanket, because I'm going to use this to sew the fin of the blanket to the body of the blanket. So now that we have this loop here, we can go ahead and pull that all the way through. Okay, and pull it nice and tight. So that would actually be the bottom. This is the body of your mermaid blanket. Okay, so now we're going to move on to knitting the fin. So you're going to need a long tail again, and we're going to do about 1, 2, 3, about 4 feet of tail. And then we're going to make our slip knot. So do that just as I showed you with the lavender yarn. And again, I'll have all these colors listed down below. Okay, so we have our slip knot on our wrist, and now we're going to cast on 15 stitches for the fin. So go ahead and cast on your 15 stitches. Okay, now that you have your 15 stitches, go ahead and knit 2 rows. So on row 3, we are going to knit 2. And then we're going to knit 2 together, like I showed you at the end of the blanket. So knit 2 stitches together as if they're one. And then we're going to knit 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're going to knit 2 stitches together and then knit the last 2 stitches. So that was row 3, and now we're going to move on to row 4. So knit 2. And then we'll knit 2 stitches together. Then we're going to knit 5 stitches. And then we're going to knit 2 stitches together as if they're one. And then we're going to knit the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to start with the pink yarn. We're all done with the blue. So you're going to want to cut the blue yarn about 3 inches away from this last stitch right here. So grab your scissors and cut. Okay. And now we're going to add on our pink yarn with a triple knot, just like I showed you on the body of the blanket. So go ahead and tie a triple knot as close as you can to that stitch. So after adding on our pink yarn, we're going to knit 1 row. So just go ahead and knit all of the stitches. And as you can see, we're now working with the pink yarn. And now we're going to move on to row 6. So row 6, we're going to start by knitting 1 over to our right arm, knit 1 more, and then we're going to knit these 2 stitches together as if they're one. And then we're going to knit 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to knit these 2 stitches together as if they're one. And we're going to knit the last 2 stitches. So 1, 2. Alright, so that was row 6. In row 7, we're going to knit 2. So 1 over to your left arm, 2. And then we're going to knit these 2 stitches together. And then we're going to knit 1, knit these 2 stitches together, and then we're going to knit these next 2 stitches. So for row 8, we're just going to knit all of our stitches. Row 9, we're going to knit 2, knit 2 stitches together, knit the last 3, and then move on to row 10. We're going to knit all of our stitches. And that's it for knitting on the fin. Now we're going to bind off our stitches and end the fin or the tail, whatever you want to call it. So remember how we did that with the blanket, we're going to do it the same way with the fin. So we knit 1, knit 1 more, and bind that one off. Knit 1, bind 1 off. Remember to only tighten a little bit when you're binding off. Knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, knit the last one, bind that one off. So now you're left with this loop on your arm, And again, we're just going to cut the tail, and this one doesn't have to be that long because we're not going to use it to sew. And then you can place it through there, create a knot, and pull it all the way through. Create that knot and tighten it up. So make sure you're working with the right end of the body. It would be the skinnier end. And then you're gonna work with the skinnier end of the fin. So the pink end, if you did the same colors as I did. And we're going to use the tail from the end of our body of the blanket. And what you wanna do is kind of curl this in, okay? So that it creates this circle here. And take the tail, and we're gonna weave it back over to this edge here, that way we can use it to sew. So just take it and stick it through that stitch, and just get it over here to this third stitch. So go through this stitch here, pull it through, and go through this last one here. And now we're back over to the edge, and now we're going to use that tail to attach the blanket to the fin. To attach them all, you want to make sure you weave this tail through the front of the blanket, the back of the blanket, and the top of the fin. So we're going to take the tail, stick it through, this is a stitch here, we're going to stick it through that stitch, pull it through, and then we're going to stick it through this stitch on the fin. And then you want to also put it through the stitch on the edge of the back of the blanket. And this doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to make it as secure as you can. All right, so tighten that up. So we have, they're attached at the edge here. So now we're gonna move on to the next stitch. So find that next stitch in the back of the blanket, come through to the front, and stick it through this second stitch here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Pull it through, and then we're going to go around and stick it through this next stitch on the tail, or the fin, sorry. All right, pull it tight. We're going to go through the back again, and so I'm going to unfold that a little bit so you can see. But we have like one more stitch here on the back of our blanket. So we're going to go through here, pull it through, come to the front of our blanket, and we're going to go to this next stitch here, pull it through, and then we already did this stitch here. You can see the purple going through, so you want to move on to the next one, and you're going to wrap it around. Is take this pink and purple, tie them together. And I'm going to tie with a triple knot. All right. So now you know that's not going to come apart. But to make it even more secure, see how there's a little gap right here? I'm going to take both of those, weave them through that last stitch, okay? I'm even gonna weave them through one more time, and I'm gonna make a knot. So pull them through that last stitch halfway to create another loop, and then pull it through halfway again, and then pull it through all the way to create that big knot there and tighten it as much as you can. All right, so now you know that's never going to come undone. So what we're gonna do now is flip the blanket over. So now we're looking at the back of the seam. We're just gonna weave these two pieces through a couple of stitches. So I'm just inserting my finger through a stitch or a loop and pulling both those strands through, okay? So I weaved it through a couple of stitches. Now I'm gonna take one of those strands and weave it through one more time, okay? And now I'm gonna tie a knot with those two again. And this is just to make sure the blanket never comes undone. So if you're giving it to a child and they don't know how to be as gentle on knit things like this or handmade things, it just makes sure that it won't come undone. So now we're gonna trim those up. All right. And now we're going to weave in all of our ends. We have this knot here that we have to trim up first. That was from attaching the pink yarn to the blue yarn. So go ahead and trim that up. So we're basically just finishing our blanket now and cleaning up everything and making it look complete. And now we have our tail from the beginning of the fin. And we're just gonna take that. We're gonna go under this one, so wrap it through there. I'm just weaving it in. Wrap it through one more. And then I like to go under one of these and make a knot. So go under halfway, pull it through halfway, pull it through halfway again, and then pull it through all the way to create a knot. And then you're gonna trim that. So I know I'm gonna have a lot of people ask me how to sew up the back of the blanket because some people are gonna want it that way. So I'll go ahead and show you. We're going to attach some purple yarn. And to do that, I'm gonna go right here in this first stitch, and I'm gonna go on the other side and find that stitch, okay? And we're gonna take this and insert, tie a knot. I know I like my knots, but I've been arm knitting for a while and you always want to make sure, since it's such a loose knit, that it just doesn't come undone. So I just did a triple knot, and we'll weave that in after. But for now, I'm going to cut a piece probably about 3 feet long, and we're going to weave it through. And weave it through. Pull it all the way through. And so move up to this next one, and we're going to wrap it around and pull it all the way through, and I'll probably just go up to about here. And pull it through. Now on this last one, don't pull it through all the way because we are going to create another knot. So pull it through halfway, pull it through halfway again to create another loop, and pull the strand all the way through to create that knot. Now you want to go ahead and weave in both of these ends. So you want to do that on the inside. I think I need new scissors, guys. All right. So now you've sewn up the back. Okay. I will have pictures of the finished product and everything on my blog, so if you go to simplymaggie.com, you'll find everything there. The pattern, what you'll need, where you can get it from, how much it cost me to make this. I hope you guys like this tutorial. I am very sorry about the lighting, all of the shadows, but I have a 6-month-old now and I can only film when my husband is home after work. So I really hope you guys like this pattern. Subscribe if you want to see more patterns like this. And that's it. I'll see you guys in my next video.